So earlier today, as I sit here recording this, and yesterday, if not even longer ago, by the time you're actually watching this, the United States Supreme Court heard arguments in a case challenging a Tennessee law that bans transgender children from accessing gender affirming care. And the case won't actually be decided until next year. But if this is an issue that you care about, and it should be an issue that you care about, I would just ask you to mentally and emotionally prepare yourselves because you're going to lose this one. It's a 6-3 conservative majority on the Supreme Court. And they are almost certainly going to rule that this Tennessee law banning gender affirming care for children should be allowed to stand. That's just the way it's going to go. And it sucks. And I wish that it was not that way, but that is the most likely outcome. But I don't make this video just to point out the obvious like that. There was a specific point in the justices questioning the attorneys who presented their cases that I wanted to point out. This is from CNN's live reporting on the arguments before the Supreme Court on this case, and this is from a section of that report with the headline, Jackson Grills Tennessee on Who Can Get Hormone Treatments Under Law. And this was reported by Tierney Sneed. An exchange between Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson and Tennessee attorney Matthew Rice got testy as she grew frustrated with how he was depending on a law not before the court to answer her questions. Jackson was pressing on who can and cannot get hormonal treatment under the Tennessee ban in dispute in the case. Jackson asked whether a boy who wanted hormones to deepen his voice in order to affirm his masculinity could get the treatments. Rice said the boy would not, because that was not a medical condition. But under more pressing by Jackson, he acknowledged that it was another law on Tennessee's books barring the use of the drug for cosmetic reasons that would prevent that treatment. Jackson demanded that Rice set aside that statute, since that is not the law being challenged today, and focused on the specific statute in this case. Eventually, Rice conceded that particular ban would not prevent the boy from receiving that treatment. Jackson then turned the hypothetical to a biological girl who wanted the treatment to deepen her voice. I think if it's for the purpose of identifying inconsistent with their sex, she would be barred from doing that, he said. Fantastic work there from Justice Jackson. And what that does is it demonstrates that despite their insistence to the contrary, laws like this are not about child safety. They're not about protecting children from, I guess, predatory doctors or predatory parents who want to force kids who aren't trans into undergoing some kind of medical transition, whatever crackpot idea that these right-wingers have that they think they're, or that they claim they're protecting poor innocent children from. And keep in mind, this case, this challenge to the Tennessee law was brought by parents of trans children. This is not like some outside group agitating and trying to impose some unwanted trans agenda on the people of Tennessee. This is parents of trans kids who are saying this law is unfair because it prohibits our children from accessing medical care, and it prevents us as the parents of our children from making medical decisions about our child with consultation with our doctor, which in any other area we would be allowed to do. But for some reason, when it comes to trans-related health care, when it comes to gender-affirming care, this law is prohibiting us from doing that. And that's not fair. It's not fair to us. It's not fair to our kids. It's not fair to the people. It's an unjust law. That's the basis of the challenge. And the Republicans who support the law say, this isn't about discriminating against anybody. This isn't about making trans people second-class citizens, even more so than they already are. We're concerned about the health and safety of children. And we don't want children to be able to be made to undergo these procedures that could result in some permanent change that they might later decide they don't want, but now they're stuck with it. And this is the argument. It's about the safety of the children. It's not about the fact that the children are trans. It's about the safety of the children. And Justice Jackson points out, oh, it's about the safety of the children, but under the law that is before the court today, some children could access this care and others couldn't. If a non-trans child, also known as a cis child, if a cis male child wanted to access hormones to deepen his voice as a form of gender affirming care that would affirm his gender that he was assigned at birth, which in his case would have been the correct gender because he's not trans, well, under this law, he'd be allowed to do that. At least if his doctors and his parents, all got together and said this is the best thing for him, then he, as a cis child, could access this form of gender affirming care. Doesn't seem to be a safety issue there, does it? At least not in the eyes of this law that's being challenged and defended by attorneys from the state of Tennessee, right? This law that is at issue before the court. Why, if it's a child safety issue, why, if these treatments are so dangerous that the state of Tennessee had to pass a law to protect children from them, how comes it would be permissible under this law for a cisgender child to access this kind of care, but it wouldn't be permitted for a transgender child to? If it's all about child safety and it's not about discriminating against trans people, what's the difference? It's the same treatment. It would have the same physiological effect, whether it was administered to a cisgender patient or a transgender patient. So why would the cisgender child be allowed to access it, but a transgender child who wanted to make use of the exact same treatment for the exact same purpose, changing their voice to affirm their gender, which in their case would be not the gender they were assigned at birth? What's the difference? And the answer is, as Justice Jackson pointed out, there is no difference. Because this law and laws like it and all such efforts being pushed around the country and indeed around the world to erect blocks between trans people and gender-affirming healthcare are not about safety. They're not about protecting people. It's about discrimination. It's about discriminating against transgender people and trying to make them scapegoats and trying to raise their visibility in the eyes of the public and say, these people are freaks, these people are deviants, you should be afraid of these people, and that's why you should vote for us, because we are going to protect you from these dangerous people. These dangerous people who apparently want to inflict their kind of gender identity on your children, even though your children aren't actually trans themselves. That's the argument being made, usually implicitly, sometimes explicitly, that trans people are recruiting, and they're like vampires. They're trying to turn your child who isn't trans into a trans child, and they're going to use these hormone treatments and puberty blockers and other forms of gender-affirming care in order to do it. That's what it's about. It's about fear. It's about bigotry. It's about ignorance and intolerance. The one thing it is definitely not about is child safety. And now we have evidence, very, very strongly argued, brilliantly phrased, brilliantly constructed evidence from Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson, presented before the United States Supreme Court in what will probably sadly be a losing effort in light of the ideologies of 6 of the 9 justices. But it's appreciated nonetheless. Bigotry like this that tries to disguise itself as some legitimate concern must always be exposed.